What is going on, Major League Hacking community? I am super excited today. We have some very special programming. My name is Matt Steffen. I am here representing RedBull Basement. We are here to talk to some of Canada's top up-and-coming innovators to basically lead a discussion about what does it take to bring an idea from ideation all the way through to activation. There's obviously a lot of struggles and hurdles that come with doing that. And it takes a lot of gut to just put your life on the line, to put things on the line, and to break out into, building a business or building a company or building the next great nonprofit. So without further ado, I want to introduce the panelists that I will have the pleasure of leading through a guided conversation today. Before I do that, I do just want to cover some quick housekeeping. Know that this is interactive. We want you to be engaged. We want you to be involved. And with that, we've got a opportunity. There's wherever you're streaming, wherever you're tuning into, please be encouraged to hit the chat at any point throughout the panel discussion. Drop your questions in there. We want to know, what are you thinking? We want to know, what do you want to ask the panelists? We're here to help. Do you have, do you want to get their thoughts on your ideas? Let us know. Please drop it in the chat. We're going to reserve about 15 to 20 minutes at the end for QA after we get through the initial questions. So without further ado, let me introduce the absolute stars of this show. First up on the panel, we have Miss Zyla Foxlin. Zyla graduated in 2019 from Case Western Reserve University with a BSc in General Engineering and a concentration in Mechatronics and Creative Technology, as well as a minor in Studio Art. Now, Zyla is a firm believer that femininity and engineering are not mutually exclusive, and aspires to be the kind of role model that shows young girls that the way that they present themselves has no bearing on their technical skill. I love that. She began YouTubing in college with the channel Beauty and the Bolt, as well as to provide public makerspace access to free tutorial videos. Eventually, Beauty and the Bolt actually filed as a 501c3 nonprofit, where Zyla now serves as executive director. For more info, visit her personal website at zylafoxlin.com. Next up on the panel, I have the pleasure of introducing Miss Sabrina Cruz. Sabrina is a digital media producer, best known for her YouTube presence, where she makes educational content by combining her skills in research, writing, and motion design. Sabrina has amassed an online audience of over 350,000 people while studying for her degree in mathematics and economics. To learn more, you can also check out her personal website, sabrinacruz.ca. Third, we have Mr. Christopher Gu. You can call him Chris. He is a fifth-year computer science at Missouri University and Science and Technology. In his time at MS&T, he co-founded their first ever hackathon, Pick Hacks, and continues to help hackers at his school and in all of the Midwest really gain access to tech opportunities and resources. Chris is also known for his work creating augmented reality filters on Instagram, such as Guess the Gibberish, Which Dog Breed Are You, Headbeat, Karaoke Roulette, Roast Me, Pronounce, Slit Scan, and many, many more. The list goes on, which, this is crazy, have garnered over 4.3 billion views. You can check out his filters at Gu_Christopher and at his other work at his website as well, ChristopherGu.me. Finally, last but not least, we have Julian DeVito, who represents half of Team Sightly. We're super honored to have Julian today. Together with Karan Bilal, they make up Team Sightly, as I mentioned. They were RedBull Basement's 2019 Canadian finalist team winners. Now, Julian is a recent business graduate from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. And while he was in school, he fell in love with tech and also helping others. It was this passion about mental health and currently working to improve students' access to overall care in university students that led to the development of Team Sightly. To learn more about them, you can check out Sightly at @try Sightly. So there you have it. Without further ado, I'm super excited to bring this team together. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Super awesome to have you. I know we got Zyla's on the road calling in from who knows where, Wyoming. We've got Chris calling in from the university campus, masked up, making sure that COVID protocols are upheld. So I love that. Thank you guys so much. And to kick things off, Julian, I actually wanted to flip it over to you. We're here representing RedBull Basement, and I know a lot of the streamers that are probably tuning in are just curious about the process and what the application kind of looked like. So I just wanted to open it up with you, man, to say, when you thought about first applying to the program, where were you at in the application process? Was this something you had been thinking about for months? And how did you guys kind of come together to make your video to submit to RedBull Basement?
Yeah, sounds good, Matt. So honestly, like it's super easy to apply, and I just want to make it clear, like you don't need to have like some well thought out, in-depth business plan that you've been already working on for a long time. Like any students, all you need is just a simple idea, and who knows where that can go. Like kind of look what happened with us. Like it was a simple idea. The application's super easy. Just ensure you do it. It's super simple.
That's awesome, man. And now, are you guys like video producers? Did you have to hire somebody? How did you kind of go about making the actual application video?
I just used my MacBook. Like we filmed a simple video from a laptop. Like we were actually already on campus for something else. We were doing like a design-a-thon, and then we saw like a RedBull rep come up to us, basically gave us a flyer. And then before we went home that day, we're like, okay, let's just apply. Let's go to a lecture hall. Let's take a couple minutes, and then we put together kind of an idea based on a problem that we've been thinking about for a little bit. But in terms of the idea, we kind of just came up with it on the spot, and then we just submitted the video, and that was it.
That's awesome, man. And you said that it was a problem that you'd been thinking about for a little while. Like, do you think that are you always kind of looking around your world to identify problems? Like, do you have a little notebook that you write stuff down in, or how did you go about resurfacing the idea and actually identifying that problem?
So, it was definitely a problem we were thinking about for a while. And I'd say, for anyone who wants to start a company, like don't start with a solution. Like you got to start with a problem. Start with a problem you care about deeply, because it's going to be a long journey that you're on. But definitely start with a problem that you care about, and then I'd say take it from there.
That's great advice, man. And I think that especially this competition, it's all about the identification of the problem, right? The RedBull Basement is about people that can come together to solve problems, right? And solve problems with student life. And Sabrina, maybe that's actually something real quick I could ask you as well. Like, your experience in university, like what were some of the problems that you identified, and how has that kind of led to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I was recently a university student, just graduated, middle of the pandemic, never got a convocation. Ooh. But I love the experience of being in university, but there were some frictions there that I'm certain are showing up even more with the online courses. My biggest one personally was the fact that it felt like everything was so focused on testing, on memorization, and that kind of sucks. And that's why I love things like RedBull Basement. That's why I love hackathons, because it gives you the chance to like apply those things that you're learning, so that you're not just stuck there reading textbook, answering multiple choice questions, wondering why significant digits exist when we have fractions, when you could just be applying these things. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. It's like more the applied learning space, right? And I look at all the panelists. I encourage you to check out all the work that they've been doing, because it's all about applying learning and actually, getting out there and getting your hands dirty and doing it, right? And Chris, maybe that's something we can chat about. Like, where does your passion for hackathons come? I mean, you started one of these. I think it's the biggest one in the Midwest. Like, what does when I ask you about applied learning, what does it mean to you, and where does your passion come from?
Yeah, so I actually attended my first hackathon, I think sophomore year. And it was the first time where I could take what I learned from classes and like my passions and like dedicate an entire weekend to building out a project and idea. And I love that concept so much that I started one at my university, and we're like one of the largest hackathons in the Midwest. We bring hundreds of students, a lot of them first-time hackers, to participate. And I just love seeing people actually pursue their passions through tech that they have learned in college. So it's a great opportunity. MLH and I both like to say that hackathons are quote unquote like an invention marathon. And that's definitely the case.
That's awesome, man. So like in your experience, when you're on the ground, at one of these hackathons, like what's sort of like the energy like in there?
Buzzing. Like there's excitement, people are generating ideas, talking about like ways to implement them. There's a lot of collaboration, a lot of Red Bull because there's no sleep, so or there's a limited time, so like a lot of people don't sleep, and so caffeine is is a way around the hackathon world. But yeah, it's pretty motivating too to be around a lot of people who are all trying to get something out, and that also aligns with their passions.
It's right. And real quick, Julian, how does that kind of compare to the energy at RedBull Basement that you experienced, as you moved up to the regionals and, the nationals?
Oh my God. Like from the beginning, it just kept going up and up and up and up until we were on that final stage. Like the whole time was just so much energy. Like meeting everyone from around the world was like also one of the best experiences I've ever had. We've made so many, like lifelong friendships, and we even still keep in contact with some of them today.
Wow, that's amazing. So like it is a real global community.
Oh, 100%.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And I mean, like, how have you gone about staying in touch with those people? Like, are you guys, connected on social, or, is there a bit of like like, does Red Bull facilitate some of the connections? How's it kind of gone since you've, been in the competition?
So we're connected on like Instagram and social for sure, but we even have like WhatsApp group chats.
Nice.
So we definitely like still keep like regular communication going on amongst us, kind of checking in, see how everyone's doing, like kind of the progression, kind of with your ideas, but even more so like on a personal level.
That's so awesome. That's what I mean. Like that's what it's all about, right? Like creating those connections that last a lifetime. And it's there's no hiding the struggles that come. And when you have a strong community that you can be surrounded by and just continue to motivate and pull energy from people, I think that's it's super inspiring. So one question that I have as we think about like applied learning, getting our hands dirty. Zyla, you're no stranger to rolling up your sleeves and putting in the hard work. I'm just curious, like once you've identified a problem or come up with a creative idea for something that you want to execute on, what does your kind of process look like to bring that idea and like making it a reality?
Yeah, something that I think is really important is if you, at least this is to me, if you think too long on an idea, like you start pondering it, like start thinking of solutions for maybe a day or two, but make sure you're also giving yourself room to get really excited about whatever solution you're coming up with, whatever problem that you're solving, and then just go out, like get the materials, break out your computer and start trying it. Like the easiest way to fail at a project is to not even start it. Because once you get started, you're going to hit tons and tons of roadblocks. But since you already have some momentum going, it's really not quite so hard as trying to solve all those roadblocks before you even start the project.
Yeah, I think everyone's nodding along. I think that everyone's had their own sort of experience with that. So I guess let me throw it back at you to say, when do you know when it's time to actually like scrap that and go back to the drawing board? Like if you hit a roadblock and, how long do you kind of keep going at it until you know that it's maybe time to reapproach?
And like start the problem over again, not scrap.
Maybe go on a tangent or come back at a different angle.
Yeah, I think that sometimes, every project is going to have lots and lots of branches. And so typically if I get really, really stuck on like one particular problem within whatever I'm working on, I'll go work on a different part of it for a little while. I find if you walk away from the project, it's a lot easier to never go back to it. So I just try to find a different problem within that project and then usually you'll learn something about the system as a whole, and you can then go and reapply, and it doesn't feel as much like you're scrapping work that you've already done. There is of course the sunk cost fallacy in there, but it lightens the blow a little bit.
Sunk cost fallacy. What can you describe that for us a little bit?
Yeah, it basically is, if you keep working on, we'll use a project in example. Basically, you keep working on a project. Say you've like bought a bunch of materials. That's the easiest way to visualize it. You've bought a bunch of materials to go for a solution, and then you realize that you've tried all of those things, they don't work, and there's something else, but you want to keep pushing for the wrong solution because you've put money into it. But that cost can be money, it can be time, it can even be like emotional investment. So it's very important to be very wary of that fallacy and not let yourself fall into that trap. There's nothing wrong with scrapping whatever you're doing and starting over.
That's super interesting. And I mean, Chris, I actually want to pull on you for this, because I know, you've done all this amazing work on augmented reality filters, and we were chatting before about how there's so much more to you than that, and you're continuing to grow your skill set and move forward. Like, do you identify with the sunken cost fallacy, to like specifically augmented reality filters, for example, because you've had so much success in that area? Or do you find it easy to keep pushing past that and staying creative and trying new things?
I would say a little bit of both. For me specifically, and like sometimes if I do hit a roadblock, instead of like dropping the project completely, I move on to a different project that I'm currently working on, or something else that I need to get done. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
No, totally. It makes sense, right? Because I think you guys can share so much wisdom about how you don't stay siloed on one thing. You all are,
right.
have multiple projects on the go. You're not defining yourself as one thing. You're kind of keeping yourselves open to new opportunities and new projects. And it gives you the chance to, when you come into a roadblock in one spot, maybe park it and then go somewhere else and, keep working and keep, developing ideas. So you keep the momentum, even though it's not in the same, maybe track. So Serena, and that's a bit of a question that's coming up for me, because you come like you're a pure creative, right? Like you're doing digital media. And how do you foster creativity in yourself and in your team?
So I have the benefit of being a creative coming from a STEM background. I think Zyla can definitely relate to this. I'm certain everybody on this panel can, where you spend so much time like in the school system that's telling you to like think about things with logic, with numbers, with theory. And then the creative part of your brain is always just looking for ways around that to escape, to like apply your actual interest. So I think it's like very beneficial for my creativity to have studied STEM, to think about this structured process, because not only do you get that toolkit of being able to like, here's how I approach a project logically, here's how I avoid sunk cost fallacies, but at the same time, your brain desperately seeks an escape. And so you can't help but think like, what if I do this? What if I paint this picture? I have a painting back here. Oh, I can't point at it. There we go. Totally abstract. Wow. Never learned how to do that in school, but I just couldn't help but do it because I wanted to avoid homework.
I love that. That's awesome. So it's like, you're finding new things to explore, and whether they're, they fit within your schoolwork or they don't, it's about basically just following the passions that you have to maybe uncover something new about yourself. And then that is revealing itself in your work, is what it sounds like.
For sure. You're great at summarizing things.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. So Julian, I got a question for you, man, just because, we talked about sunk cost fallacies, and you obviously, there's an emotional connection to Team, Sightly, and the idea that you built as part of Red Bull. And how is that transferred into where you're at with the idea right now? Maybe tell us a little bit about, what life after the contest looked like, and what your day-to-day kind of is right now.
For sure. So I think it's kind of important to kind of start about our roots a little bit too. Like because the problem's so important, you got to care about what you're working on. Like Karan and I, we kind of struggle with our mental health a little bit in university. So this was kind of like the inspiration behind what we've done. And I think you need that inspiration because it does get hard at times when you're working on an idea and trying to bring it to life. There's so many variables and stuff that needs to come together. And really having that kind of motivation behind us has really propelled us forward and has kept us motivated on working on this, late nights, weekends, stuff like that. So in terms of after the competition, we were still, full steam ahead, 110% effort into this. And then since then, we've been talking to universities about kind of implementing slightly on campus. We've been talking to a bunch of students interested in using it for themselves. So in terms of right now, yeah, we're really trying to build those relationships and definitely bring it to market.
That's awesome, man. Well, kudos to you guys for continuing to take the momentum and the support of the community and just letting that fuel you, right? And this is, I think what's so cool about that is you started with not only a problem, but something that was deeply personal to you. And it's about, creating positivity in the world, right? And helping other people overcome anxieties and things that they're concerned about and things that they're struggling with. And, Zyla, I got a question for you because, you took something that was so deeply personal to you with Beauty and the Bolt and you made it a nonprofit. And what has that transition been? And walk us through what it meant for you to create a nonprofit and what your goal was with doing that.
Yeah, I think that so both the creation of the nonprofit and the startup, venture funded startup that I ran before it were both accidental creations. And I think that that's really valuable because it means that you're solving a problem. And this goes back to what Julian said, right at the beginning, is that you're solving a problem that you want to create a solution for. You're not doing it to try to become an entrepreneur. You're not doing it to try to become an executive director or a CEO or whatever title you want. You're doing it because you want to be doing what you're doing. You want to be solving that problem. And so with Beauty and the Bolt, it was very much I saw a need exclusively in my university where our training process for maker spaces was really biased towards a very homogenous group of people that were white and male. And so I was like, let's try to create a better way of doing these tutorials. And that sort of spiraled into a YouTube channel by accident. And then from that, a bunch of schools started asking us to do more for them. And so the only legal way to do it that made sense was to file as a nonprofit. And so I didn't set out with the goal of, running a nonprofit. I set out with the goal of solving the problem I was trying to solve. And then turning it into a company or turning it into a nonprofit was just a legal housing for that avenue, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah, it reminds me of, Simon Sinek talks a lot about starting with your why, and people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that you just summarized that so beautifully that, by starting with something that you cared about, it led to all of these other amazing opportunities and it led to the creation of a community. And I think people can tell, people sense the authenticity. And I think more than ever, we buy from people that we associate with and that we feel are being authentic, right? And that comes through so clearly. Sabrina, I got another question for you as it relates to authenticity. And you're a storyteller and you're creating content. What does authenticity? What does it mean to you, and how do you foster it?
Yeah, authenticity is a tricky subject, especially because not only am I producing videos, I'm also editing them. So I know exactly how many times I mess up a sentence and what actually people see. But I think fundamentally, from the creator's side, authenticity just means showing that it's not all perfect, just being honest and letting people know, if you're a creator, you got to show them the hard parts too. You can't sell a fake lifestyle because people can tell. More than ever, everybody knows what's going on online nowadays. People have a sense of different lifestyles just because it's appearing on all of their timelines. So don't waste your time sharing this fake life, and just show the hard parts, be honest, and like be honest with yourself, and then be honest with your audience. That was such a kitschy line. I hated that.
I love that.
Boom, being honest with myself.
I love that. No, that's great. That's so great though, because I mean, yeah, if you can't, that's where it all starts from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Julian, I got a bit of a question for you on that idea of authenticity and just being honest with the people around you. Like when you were at RedBull Basement, were you being put in touch with mentors and stuff and people that were there to help you? And what kind of attitude did you approach those mentors and support systems with?
So that was another thing that was great about the competition too, is we were put into contact with some really, really cool mentors who've accomplished a lot of really cool things. And it was super helpful. And then to the point on kind of being authentic, like obviously we kind of had to open up about our own struggles too. And, like it's not an easy thing to always talk about, but I think that's a conversation that needs to happen. And when you begin to talk about difficult things like that, you really start to learn a lot about yourself. And then kind of that awareness allows you to then reorient yourself and kind of start to take steps going forward. And then coming back to those conversations with the mentors, by having these open, honest conversations, we were able to get really, really good advice that really helped us going forward.
Wow. I love that, man. Thank you. I think you just, you opened up a scene there. And Chris, I want to bring your perspective in on this as well. I mean, you're one of the most authentic guys that's just living his truth each and every day online. And, you've grown and amassed a massive following for that. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Like, what is that? What are, just touching on what Sabrina and Julian have talked through about authenticity. What does it mean for you to be honest with yourself, and how do you go about living authentically?
I would say just sharing all parts of the story and not just the highlights. Sharing the difficulties that I'm having when I'm creating something, or the problems that I'm encountering. And so sharing the whole entire story instead of just the best parts on these digital platforms where we share experiences is how I personally believe I can share my most authentic self. Like even before all of this, like really huge successful AR things, I was actually very active on LinkedIn. I think I have about like 9,000 followers there. Like I didn't know that you could gain a following on LinkedIn, but I got that primarily because I posted not only about like my job offers, but like resources, like how I've actually failed so many interviews. Like people could relate to that, and it wasn't just all sunshine and rainbows, and so that's how I live my authentic self.
That's awesome. And Zyla, like you're YouTube creator. I had a chance to check out some of the videos. You see the final product, this beautiful, cedar strip canoe, or it's an amazing work of art. But how do you think about, especially when you're creating content for your followers, doing it in an authentic way? Do you show all the kind of bumps and the bruises along the way?
Yeah, I actually, one of my favorite things to do is show like the mistakes. And I really try to be conscious about not editing out the parts of the projects that I don't want people to see. And I choose to like confess almost, very few other creators in the like physical maker world do that, because it can be really difficult to admit that like you made a mistake that was potentially really dangerous, and like maybe you could have taken off a finger. Like that's a terrible thing to show as an example. But if you acknowledge it and say, hey, like I made this mistake, it can happen to anyone, be careful. It's a far more authentic and relatable way of creating content. And I think as a student, like I'm 24, it's not like I know everything in the world about everything. It's really refreshing when I see other creators do the same thing. And something that's really interesting is like YouTube analytics shows you your engagement in certain parts of a video. And on one of my videos, I actually like snapped the whole project in half by accident. And it was horrible. I'd spent like a whole month steam bending all of this wood, and then I snapped it in half. And I showed that in the video, and like my engagement went like all the way back up to 90% from like 60 in that spot of the video, because people wanted to know what was the problem and how did you fix it. Like that's more exciting.
Wow, that's awesome. So that takes a lot of courage, though, right? Like, hey, have you dealt with repercussions where people have, you know, maybe reacted negatively and you know, maybe took some hate?
Yeah, for sure. Particularly, like there was one video I made on my old channel, on the Beauty and the Bold channel, where I like ran some wood through a table router kind of like the wrong way. So it was incorrect, and so it tore out the grain, and like a lot of people were like, this is why like women shouldn't use tools, this is like, this girl is so stupid. But then I think that the number of people it helped like outweighed the number of criticism, and as a creator you have to have thick skin. Like Sabrina's nodding because she knows this. So if you're willing to put yourself out there in that way, I think you're benefiting a lot more people.
Sabrina, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the other big thing about like being authentic in the stuff that you make and like owning up to your mistakes is that it's a really poignant way to learn things. Like it gets the point across a lot better than like the super polished presentation where everyone, you just present yourself like you're an expert and you know everything, because that's not realistic, and people don't necessarily want to listen to somebody who just acts like a know-it-all. They want to know somebody who's kind of like them, going on this journey of figuring things out. Like I've structured my whole new style of making videos with answer in progress, just going in with a question and figuring it out. And sometimes, very often actually, things don't work out. Tried to teach a machine how to make pasta, made macaroni and cheese, no macaroni, just meat and cognac. I don't get it. And people enjoy stuff like that because they understand that most of the time when you're trying to innovate, to create something new, it's more mistakes than successes. It's more boofs, and it's fine. It's fine. It's just part of the process.
I love that. It reminds me of, as you were talking through that, I like came across this graph, and it was plotting like the most infamous composers of all time. And you know, you got your Mozart and your Bach, and it was, you know, like popularity on the y-axis, and on the x it was like amount of work product, like sheer pieces composed. And all the most famous, except for one outlier, are way, way down on the sheer number of pieces composed, right? And then that correlates to success. So, you know, Chris, like even in your intro, I read off like I think six AR filters and then many more. So like walk through when you think about, you know, just like producing work product, how you think about, like, are you just doing as much as you can? You know, like how do you keep going, I guess?
Yeah, so initially when I was creating filters, I didn't get that much success, but I continued pushing them out because like it was something that I personally enjoyed and my friends enjoyed. And it was cool just to see like maybe like 10 people, I don't know, 10 people share that they used a filter. And so that kept me going. And then after that huge success of the Guess Gibberish filter, that motivated me to continue making more. Not for like, I really didn't want to make filters that I think would appeal to my audience. I continued to make filters that I personally would enjoy. I think that's ties back into my authenticity as well. Like not curating your content to be more fitting to your audience, but curating your content based on yourself to appeal to people that have not like seen your things before. And so I've been pushing them out. It's been, and like whenever I get like any stroke of creativity or like inspiration, I just like work on it for like 24 hours and then it gets done. So like it's like super random and spontaneous, but whenever I do have the opportunity, I go for it.
I love that. So one thing that kind of came to mind there, because I feel like, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs will, you know, maybe they're doing something because they love it. Maybe they're super passionate about the product, the project, and, you know, it's just every day doing a bit more, and then you have that like big break. So maybe to inspire everybody that's tuning in, like Chris, what was the feeling and the emotion like as you just saw, this filter maybe get shared by the first celebrity, and then just what was the take us on a bit of a recap of what the emotions were like as it started to take off.
Literally the highlight of my quarantine. So it was like the first day and I published it, and no one was using it. But then I DM'd Elle Mills, which is also a YouTube creator, who is also part of the fund that helped Sabrina as well. She can talk about that later. But she actually made a video with some of her friends on YouTube that I watched that inspired me to make the filter. And so I DM'd her saying, your video inspired me. I made the filter. If you want to use it, that's cool. If not, that's also cool. So she used it. She posted it on her story. And then it went super crazy from there. All her friends used it and posted it on their story. And then someone used it and posted it on TikTok. And then people started using it on TikTok. And then the next day, there are hundreds of millions of views on TikTok. And there are also hundreds of millions of views on Instagram. And I'm like, wait, what just happened? Because nothing like this has ever happened before. And so looking at the analytics of the filter, it went from 100 to 40 million to the next day to 400 million impressions to the next day. I'm just wow, the impact that you can have through this thing that I just randomly decided to do in my free time is super cool. So yeah, that was the experience, and it was a pretty fun ride, not gonna lie.
The idea of just the virality of that taking off, like you said, going from 100 to 40 million overnight. I mean, it kind of drew some parallels. I mean, on a smaller scale, but not really. Julian, when you guys applied for the RedBull Basement, what was it like getting that email saying that you were going? And then, on the same side with when you got to the Canadian finals, what were the emotions like that you were experiencing receiving that news?
Oh, it was crazy. I remember I called Karan right away. I was like, man, are you looking at this right now? I had my computer in front of me. At first, even watching the votes go up before we made it to the finals. And then when we found out we were going to the finals, everything just happened super, super quick. Might not have had the same growth as the Instagram filters, hopefully one day. But I mean, we had, before we knew it, Red Bull hooked us up with an office. So we were spending basically, a lot of time at the office, kind of working on that. And then, I mean, before we knew it, we were at the finals, preparing for the final pitches. So it was just really crazy. Lots of emotions there for sure.
So awesome. And Sabrina, maybe you can speak to the recent grant that you were recipient of and the emotions that led to that.
Yeah, I think the theme of the past few people speaking, it's just the power of shooting your shot. You don't know what'll happen, and sometimes it works out really, really well. So I had this idea in the back of my head, Answer in Progress, for the longest time because of my previously mentioned issues with education, focusing a little bit too much on testing and not enough on the actual process of learning. So I got a few friends who also believed in this. Melissa Fernandez, Taha Khan, great people. And we were working on it slightly behind the scenes, but then we saw the Super Patron grant go out. It's run by Jack Conti, CEO of Patreon, incredible musician. And we were like, we're not gonna win. It's for $50,000. That money doesn't mean anything to me because it's so big in my head. So I was like, let's just apply for fun. So we wrote an application really close to the deadline. It was dead of night, middle of midterm season, but we tried. And then 3 months down the line, I get an email that got sorted into my junk, but then I fished it out and read it, and we won. It was wild, and it was unbelievable, and threw the whole trajectory of my life off in a good way. But it changed all of my plans. And yeah, man, just shoot your shot, do the thing.
Such good advice. Let's go around the horn, Zyla. I know you've shot many a shot, so maybe you can provide one for us of a example and what the emotions felt like on the back end.
Yeah, I think everyone sort of covered it. There's not a huge amount to add, although I will say, because I am a big believer that like entrepreneurs especially need to be really honest about mental health. I think that there's like that feeling of a high, but you always have to crash from it. So like when you are riding that high, just be very aware that life will go back to normal, and it's not like you're like something viral or a huge accomplishment is going to be always happening, and just don't like be aware that it's happening, and take care of yourself on the way back down too. Not to add a sad note to it, but I do think it's important. Everyone only talks about the excitement of having something happen, and then you have to like go back to work on Monday and life is normal.
100%. No, and I'm really, really happy that you actually touched on that, because I think, students especially, I think, you're inundated with so much. You've got finals, midterms, life is happening around you, more happening to you. And then we're being asked you should also apply for this competition, and there's, unlimited opportunities. So to simplify things a little bit for, everybody tuning in, I want to ask each of you almost like just a rapid fire quick round of like, what are your top 3 non-negotiables? So 3 things that you put into your day every day, regardless if it's a high or if it's a low. Can be something super simple, exercise, drinking water, whatever it is. So Sabrina, maybe I'll start with you.
It's starting with me. Cool. That's cool. Well, I always make sure to like eat a very solid breakfast. I don't know if it's true that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but it is for me.
There you go.
Yeah. I hang out with my plants. I know that's a weird thing to do. Something that I've started being able to grow plants without them dying. So I sometimes just look at them, appreciate their growth. And also the power of a good nap. Like I admit, I work pretty hard. Sometimes I get tired in the middle of the day. Go for a bit of a lie down.
I love it. It's great. Chris, how about you, man?
Literally, I was going to say a nap too. A nap, oh, it's just so good. The feeling, yeah. So my first would be a nap. The second is to at least work on something I'm super passionate at least once during the day. Like as a student, we're always taking classes and doing homework that is not like really what we want to do. And so like allocating that time of the day to actually work on something you're passionate about and that doesn't feel like work, I think is super important. And then 3, spending quality time with my new puppy.
Oh.
How are we supposed to follow a puppy? Come on.
How about you, Zala?
I 100% of the time always have to start my day with coffee. I can skip breakfast. I can skip literally anything, but not coffee. You probably saw I was like drinking my coffee while we were starting this call. And then I find that I always do best if I like see the sun at some point in the day. So I always try to get out of the house, get out of the apartment, get out. Even if it's just driving to run an errand or something, just making sure I get my vitamin D. And then I always try to either like work with my hands for a little bit of the day or do something that I'm learning. And it doesn't have to be academic. It can be as simple as like a new hobby. I really like rotating through hobbies. I think making sure that you're always improving at something, even if it has nothing to do with your career, is really important. So those are kind of my three things.
That's great. Julian.
Yeah, I was gonna say like coffee. I need coffee in the morning or else I can't function. I can't do anything. So I'd say the other 2 things are I started meditating regularly, which I think is like super important. I think it definitely helps a lot. And then the other thing is I picked up running as a good habit. I kind of realized like as I was starting to get older, like habits are super important in your life, especially if you want to kind of change your direction and whatnot. So you got to pick good habits. And I think that meditation, exercising, petting your puppy, like these are all like fantastic things that everyone should do.
That's great. Yeah, I think, when the world gets super complicated and having those things that you fall back on when, the world seems to be a complex and confusing place, when I just need to go work with my hands, get some sun, go for maybe a quick run, grab some water, have a coffee, take a nap. Like that's a pretty, it's a pretty nice baseline to come back to. whether you're riding a high or, you know, maybe just trying to get through a low. So we're coming up, like, I'm just watching our time here. I know I did want to leave some space for if we had any kind of questions coming in from the chat. Lots of commentary. I think that, you know, I'll get the team at Major League Hacking to drop some of the questions into the chat here, and I'll just monitor it. It's looking like, here's a good one. I've got one for you. So Chris, how can you become an expert in a field that is continually evolving?
Not gonna lie, it's hard. It's so hard. When I started like learning filters specifically, ramping up was a challenge. But like once I got to my level of like technical expertise, I felt comfortable. But then like in a few months, like there are updates and like there's new capabilities and there's like improvements, and just like keeping up with that is difficult. And honestly, yeah, it's hard, but just like if you have the passion for it, then overcoming those roadblocks, I think is a natural part of the process. And when you do, then you can be considered an expert in the field, though I wouldn't consider myself an expert. There are definitely a ton of other people who are way more technically proficient and advanced in augmented reality filters. But I would say that my interest in them has kept me continually learning about it. And I think that's what makes me who I am.
Great answer. Passion, running theme of today's conversation. That passion, finding it, finding your why. Sabrina, here's one for you. How do you manage the expectation of a conventional job to that of starting your own venture? Any takes on getting some experience after graduation before starting your own venture? Thanks, Trey.
Oh, what a question that I'm still currently struggling with. Yeah, it's really tough because in many ways, like a couple of years ago, saying that I want to be a YouTuber would have sounded bizarre because there wasn't a lot of infrastructure there, but a lot of stuff is in place now to make a living off of it. But still, it just sounds like a weird thing to tell your parents. And it's a conversation I'm still currently having with my parents of being like, maybe I don't work in an office from 9 to 5. And it's really tough, but the way that I'm phrasing it for myself, at the very least, in terms of like balancing conventional job versus starting your own venture, is like weigh the pros and cons realistically. Like I get that there is a lot to do with like you might regret not chasing your dreams, but also we're like in our 20s, 30s, or whatever. There's still a lot of life left to live, so don't feel like you need to race to that finish line. But if it is something that you really want to do, when you have the passion and the capability to do it now, why not do it now? And that's how I'm telling myself that this isn't the dumbest decision of my life. But who knows?
I love that. I think like for anyone that follows or watches Gary Vee, like, you know, he can be pretty direct, but one of the things that I associated with is you just said, just chalk up your 20s to doing all the crazy things that you ever wanted to do. And if you're 30 and you still feel like that you have that feeling, then maybe it's time to think about, you know, finding some stability, but just don't even worry about it for the first, you know, for those 10 years. So Julia, man, how about, you know, question for you, man. You're business development manager at a growing company right now. How are you kind of managing the conventional job with, you know, being the venture on the side?
In terms of, yeah, it's like definitely prioritizing time. Like you gotta get organized really, really quick. And you gotta know your priorities. Like, what do you want to do, right? Like if you can't really waste time anymore if you really want to focus your time on doing these things. So definitely time management. But I saw a question in there about how much do you need to know about business to have a successful tech startup? That's a great question. Honestly, the answer is not that much. You can kind of learn as you go. There's a couple, you know, core things that you should know, but the most important thing is talk to your customers and definitely try to sell. and keep a tight feedback loop between talking to your customers and improving your product constantly.
Great advice. Great advice. Sally, do you have anything to add to that? How much business do you have to know about business?
So I knew literally nothing. I just built a project, and this is my tech startup before the nonprofit. I actually was Googling like what is a convertible note while on the phone with my first investor. Like that's how little I knew. I did not know what a Delaware C corporation was. I did not know anything. But it's all stuff you can figure out as you go. The key is just to have the humility to ask people who know better than you, but also have a really good like bullshit filter, so that you only take the good advice.
Great advice. Take the good advice.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. One came in from the chat, and I mean round table. But Julian, maybe you can start. Is any advice for students considering applying for RedBull Basement?
Do it. Do it. If you haven't already done it, then do it. As I mentioned earlier, like you don't need to have some well thought out business plan. All you need is an idea. All you need is a problem you care about, and all you need is like a minute-long video. Just put it together. Do it. You won't regret it. I promise you. And it's literally changed my life. And I'm super happy for what's happened after that. So definitely do it.
Awesome. Next question we have is, how do you deal with hectic schedules and wanting to do too many things at once? Chris, this sounds like a perfect question for you.
Yeah, y'all should see my Google Calendar. Literally every hour is blocked off for like other random things. But I would say, to be honest, I don't really deal with it well. And that's just how my mind works. I'm just like super spontaneous, and if I want to do something, I'll do it. And then I have all these other responsibilities I have to also schedule in. But one thing that I have like started to learn is that just like in general throughout the days and weeks, if I'm dedicating more time to a specific project, I'm like keeping in the back of my head like, oh, this is something that I'm actually super passionate about, but like I'd never like say out loud, but like it's something that you become aware of. And so like acting on those instincts and like actually scheduling out more time to those specific projects and scheduling less time for other things, I think is important in order to maintain a healthy schedule. Something I'm actively working on. And so, yeah, that's how I personally deal with it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, even just, for a lot of students, just managing a Google Calendar. I mean, I didn't even use a calendar when I was in university, so to have that as a skill that you've developed and that every hour is accounted for, I think is really encouraging. And there's a bit of a follow-up on here that says, do you find that having a full-time job and a side venture is overwhelming? Do you still have time for yourself, friends, family?
Is this for me as well?
Yeah, a little follow-up.
Yeah, so don't have a job, but being a full-time student and having all these side projects is definitely overwhelming. But I guess the plus side in quarantine is like, you don't really interact with your friends or family in person often. So like you have all the time in the world for yourself. And so I've been spending a lot of time on all the extracurriculars and things that I have done. But I do anticipate when I do start my full-time job in the spring, that having these side ventures might take up a lot of time. And I don't know, social interaction is also important to me as well. And so trying to find that balance will definitely be a challenge. I'll let you know how it goes.
Awesome. We'll do a follow-up session specifically on that. I think we got there's another conversation that needs to be had here about the authentic, real side of entrepreneurship with all of you guys. And that's actually a good segue into another question. Sabrina, I'll start this one with you. Is what is one piece of advice that you wish you had received when you were younger?
Ooh, the real answer would be to listen to my parents, but I don't want to give them that sort of satisfaction. Yeah, I think it would just be to like not be so hard on yourself, not to feel like you need to do everything by the time you're 20, because there's so much life left to live. Just keep doing the things that are making you happy. That's it. I live with way too much pressure. I'm vibing now.
That's great. Vibe and follow your heart. Stay true to your vibe. I love it. That's just such a great question, Em. Thank you for asking it. Zyla, I'll throw that same one to you. What's one piece of advice that you wish you had received when you were younger?
Yeah, I wish I had learned how to fail. I think that failure is the most important part of any process, whether it's school, whether it's a project, even like relationships and friendships. Failure is really, really important, it's like we've talked about this earlier. It's the fastest way to learn. But really, I think success is measured by like how many times you get up after you fail, not if you just got there without failing to begin with.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Julian, I got a question, just a question of my own here is, how important have mentors been to your success, and how have you gone about finding them?
Honestly, it's been instrumental. Like, there's so much I don't know. And even my co-founder, like, there's a lot we don't know, but it's okay because we accept that and we're willing to ask for help. So definitely, yeah, reach out to mentors. Some of the mentors that we were connected to with RedBull have helped a lot, have given us really good advice that we were able to then kind of apply going forward, and really having that humility and to ask for help. But when you get it, though, you need to apply it. And you can, I'd say that's the biggest thing is yeah, definitely try to get some help from mentors. Understand that, you might not know everything, but that's okay.
That's really cool. Maybe one, kind of rounding off on that, like you mentioned your co-founder. How did you guys find each other?
Great question. First week of university, first year, literally met him on the field when we were doing like orientation. Instantly knew I wanted to be his friend. Kind of hit it off after that. And then that's another thing I want to say too is if you want to work on a difficult problem, like work on it with people that you have a relationship with. Because when things become tough, you guys can kind of work it out. But yeah, we met in university, and one of my good buddies.
That's awesome. I think that's a great, it's a great place. We're coming up on the hour right here, and I think that's a great place for us to finish. Is first off, to summarize the conversation, right? It's know yourself, know your why, right? Understand, find your passion. From there, it's taking the advice of others. Be authentic to who you are. Do a vibe check on others. Surround yourself with the energy you want to be surrounded with, and then shoot your shot. Go after it. Do it. Just get into it. So that's it for our panel today. I want to thank each of our panelists for joining us. It was my absolute pleasure to chat with you guys and hang out for the last hour. Thank you so much. Zyla, drive safe on your journey across that great country of yours. And to everybody else, we will say goodbye and have a great rest of the week.